Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and this is The Laura Flanders Show, the TV and radio program that seeks to raise radical spirits by interviewing forward-thinking people with real models of shifting power from the few to the many in the worlds of arts, entrepreneurship, and politics. This week, throw out what you think you know about economics. Self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth of Oxford University will explain how to think like a reality-based economist. And two eco-feminists, one from South Africa, the other Mauritius, will share a chat under a tree about Marx, feminism, and life on the planet. All that and a few words from me on the president's obsession about blood. It's all coming up on The Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the ones who are doing it. Welcome. Throw out the growth curve. Embrace the donut. What the world needs now is planetary, not flat plane economics. That is the message of a new book by self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth. For too long, our mind's eye map of our economy has been all wrong, she says. Simplistic on its face, wrong-headed in what it tries to depict, and altogether not helpful to a reality-based world with limited human and planetary resources. Lucky for us, Kate's got a fix. 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. And as befits her concern with images and maps, she has sketched out a new picture. Not an ever-rising takeoff line or even a humpbacked Kuznets curve. It's concentric circles. Hence the title of her book, Donut Economics. Raworth's an advisory member at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute and teaches in its master's program for environmental change and management. She's in the United States on a book tour. The book's just out from Chelsea Green Press. Welcome to the program, Kate. Great to have you.
My pleasure.
So tell the story of how our map of the economy got so poorly diagrammed and what GIs had to do with it.
Well, poor old Simon Kuznets. Back in the 1930s, the American government asked him to come up with a measure of national income, which he did. And he said, when he first produced it, don't mistake this for the welfare of the nation. His caveat got put aside because once there was this single number of what the economy was worth, and you could compare it to other countries and look at it year on year, we got hooked on growth.
And you had that nice little upward
That's right.
line.
So this curve, if the picture of what economic success looks like in our minds is this ever-rising line that just goes up, up, endless growth.
And what's the problem with that picture?
The problem with that picture is if you think about nature, 3.8 billion years of experimentation, nothing in nature, from your children's feet to the Amazon forest, nothing grows forever. Things in nature, they grow, healthy phase, but then they mature and come to thrive. And what I find extraordinary is that when I studied economics at university, and I'll bet anyone studying now, the question as to whether an economy comes to a maturity point and then thrives, it's not asked. What if the economy can't grow forever? What would it look like to create an economy that didn't try to grow forever but actually thrived? I think these are questions we need to start asking.
So what does it matter if we have a wrong image? And hasn't it been corrected and debunked and challenged?
So imagery, what I've learned is imagery is incredibly powerful. And if you open an economics textbook, it's full of words, it's full of way too many equations, and often there's a little picture on the side, as if just a mere illustration. But any neuroscientist will tell you that over half of the nerve fibers in your brain are serving your visual cortex, and any image goes into the back of your brain and it sits there. It lingers like economic graffiti long after the words in the equations have faded. So we really should pay a lot of attention to the pictures that we use to draw what the economy is and what it's for and who we are and how it works.
All right, so you've come up with a picture. It's very different. It's those concentric circles. You call it a donut.
I call it a donut. So just like the kind of donut you guys eat here with a hole in the middle. So imagine that donut in the middle in the hole. That's a space where people are falling short on life's essentials, be it food, water, decent housing, healthcare, education, political voice. So we want everybody in the world to get out of that space of deprivation over what I've called a social foundation, so everybody can lead a life of dignity, opportunity, and community. But we mustn't go beyond the donut's outer crust, because out there we are overshooting our pressure on the planet, causing climate change, acidifying the oceans, massive biodiversity loss, depleting the ozone layer. And we know that these Earth system processes, The Earth system scientists have said they are like planetary boundaries. They are keeping our planetary home, this extraordinary living planet, in the stable state that's so benevolent to us for the past 11,000 years. And we'd be crazy to kick ourselves out. So we have to get everybody out of the hole in the middle without going over the outer edge.
All right, so what are our tools for doing that if we want to live in that sweet spot, jammy center, if you will?
So till now, for the last 100 years, let's say, it's been growth. Growth has been the way to get everybody out of deprivation. And economists, because of the pictures they've drawn, haven't even acknowledged the existing of the living world. Well, they haven't worried about it. They've called it an externality. Well, when you call something an externality, you've already told me how important you think it isn't. So economists have worried about getting everybody out of the center, ending poverty. Now we have to have new tools and new ways of thinking to do that at the same time as coming back in. We need to debunk that growth theory, that growth obsession. Actually, I think there are two ideas we need to pursue. We need to create economies that are distributive by design, in which value created is shared far more widely with everybody who helped create it. And we need to create economies that are regenerative by design, so they work with Earth's living cyclical processes rather than cutting against them.
Now, you make the point that this will require us to consider a whole lot of players that are not usually in what you describe as the neoliberal script. Name some of them.
So the neoliberal script, and I would say it's the script that's been put on the international stage ever since Thatcher and Reagan came to power. Well, it's a story that stars the market, because the market, we're told, is efficient, so you should give it free rein. Finance, well, that we're told, infallible. Trust in its ways. Trade is win-win, open your borders. And so we just get out of the way. Players that are sort of ushered off stage, not needed to be seen. The household, that's domestic, right? Just leave it to the women. The commons, well, everybody's heard the commons are tragic, so we can just sell them off, privatize those. Earth is inexhaustible, so you can take all you want. So all these essentials of life and the world have actually been marginalized from mainstream economics. You can't even see them in the diagrams. They don't get featured. And when you leave something out of the picture, it gets exploited, crushed, and that comes back to bite you.
And the big character we've been encouraged to focus on is that rational man. You have a problem with him too?
I have a big problem with rational man. So if you read the textbooks, he's never actually drawn. His portrait isn't drawn, but if it was, he'd have to be a man. He'd be standing alone. He'd have money in his hand, ego in his heart, calculator in his head, and nature at his feet. And the trouble with him is not just how absurdly narrow he is. In fact, one of the fascinating things I learned researching this book is that on being told that he's like us, we actually become more like him. So research in this country, in the US, in Israel, has found that the more that economic students learn about rational economic man, the more they value self-interest, the less value they give to compassion, to altruism. It's as if I need to become like this model. So he began as a model of man. He's become a model for man. So it really matters how we tell ourselves who we are, because that shapes who we actually become.
What if economics didn't start and end with questions of profit, but was all about well-being instead? Just what's an economy for anyway, asks this week's guest. She is self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth, Senior Research Associate at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute. In her new book, Donut Economics, she calls out the myths about the rational economic man. What kind?
I've got this problem with democracy. Don't know what it really means. Living light about its honesty, when nothing's really what it seems. I'm in this fucking situation. Don't look never nearer. I'm waiting for a revelation. That the signs are getting clear. Right to my left, wrong to my right. I'm crashing the north. This must be the twilight zone. A grisly affair, caught unaware. Why am I so scared? Wherever the flowers go.
That's Democrazy by Chaka Khan. I'm Laura, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, forward-thinking media for forward-thinking people. That's you. Want to see our guest's donut, complete with economic sprinkles? You can catch it on our TV program, where we have featured videos from our guest, Kate Raworth, author of Donut Economics. If you missed the TV broadcast, you can watch the show on your computer at lauraflanders.com or download this podcast. And if you like what you hear, become a sustaining supporter today. You can do it for as little as $2 a month and put a little money where your media is. Thanks. That's lauraflanders.com. Later in the show, two eco-feminists, one from South Africa, the other Mauritius, have a little chat about Marx, feminism, and life. But first, back to Kate Raworth. What if instead of that profit-driven man, Mother Earth was at the center of our economic theories? That would turn the weird ones on their head. Weird, you ask? Take a listen and find out. And the data and the research is just skewed. You say, for one thing, we're studying the wrong sorts of groups. You call them weird societies. I'd love you to spell that out. And then the other is that when the research that you dig up, when you go and look at people outside of these weird societies, some of the assumptions we make about intention and motivation and how to change behavior are just totally wrong.
So a lot of the research that's been going on in recent years to say, well, how do people actually behave? It's been done by professors in the States, in Australia, in Israel, and they do what's convenient, right? They just turn to their students and they run tests with their students and they say, oh, this is what people are like. And then one researcher went off and did the same test with forest-living communities in Indonesia or native people in all sorts of very different cultures. It came back with completely different results. And he said the students who are at the doorstep of all these professors, they're weird. And what that means is we're Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. So that's the acronym WEIRD. And actually, they're not like most people at all. In fact, the way that the weird ones behave is at one end of the spectrum. So you cannot just interview your students and say this is what people are like. You're getting a very, very skewed particular version of humanity. So he launched off a whole area of research and looking at the diversity of people. And sometimes when people live in very market-based economies, they behave in one way. When they're based in economies that are subsistence, that don't have markets, families share, their behavior can be quite different. It just shows the variety of human behavior. We adapt and respond to the conditions around us.
So what do you recommend that we do? One thing, can we actually grow and be green? Can you run a business in that kind of warm, just, safe part of the donut?
Yes, I think you can, because we need to transform our economies. Today, they are deeply divisive, giving rewards to the 1%, and degenerative, running down the living planet on which we depend. We need to transform them so that they are distributive, sharing value with everyone who helps create it, and regenerative. That's an amazing transformation that needs to happen. And in that process, there are very clearly some industries that really need to grow. Solar capacity, right? Renewable energy, that's a wonderful growth field. So if someone's working in a company in that area, of course there's going to be growth there. That's an opportunity. So we need to grow back into balance. The incomes of people living on very, very low incomes, their incomes need to grow back into balance. So there are opportunities for sure.
But we've certainly interviewed people on this program who have tried. They've had very well-intentioned businesses. I'm thinking, you mentioned Anita Roddick in your book. We've had Ben and Jerry, the folks from the ice cream company in Vermont, on this show. And both of them came into the same conflict with their shareholders, that their kind of mission of being regenerative or beneficial to their community wasn't so beneficial to the shareholders. And they, at the end of the day, kind of lost their companies to buyouts, or at least Ben and Jerry's did.
So this is the fascinating, I think it's going to be a psychological drama between what I would call 21st century companies and regenerative design and 20th century capitalism. Because the 21st century designer says, how many benefits can I layer into this company so that I can actually give some away? That's the Ben and Jerry's mentality, the Body Shop mentality. 20th century capital finance says, how much value can I extract from this? Now, when you try and start a 21st century company that's generating value and giving away to the community, the environment, and you're going to be financed by these financiers who are just trying to maximize and extract the value they can capture, that is what pulls them down. And that's why we need to transform finance. So we need new kinds of financing that actually say, I want to also get a fair return for my money, but I want to give some away as well. And that's why I back these companies. It just shows that the design possibilities are out there, whether it's designing a regenerative city or a regenerative company. They need to be backed up by finance that actually unleashes the power of what they know they can create.
You've used the word design a few times. Design does require someone or group of people to be designing and kind of implementing a design. So what's the role for governance in all of this? If you didn't like industrial capitalism, didn't like finance capitalism, didn't like state socialism, who helps to direct our design in this new direction?
I love that question. I do use the word design very intentionally because I think in the 20th century, economists were desperate to be like physicists. They thought this was this reputable science and make it like physics, and there's all these laws that the economy follows. Wrong choice. The career that economists should actually take, career shift from controlling the levers of some mechanical economy. Levers don't exist. Economy is not a machine. We should be like garden designers. And the economy is more like a garden, ever evolving and changing. And some people say that sounds very laissez-faire. Well, they've never done a hard day's work in the garden because it's digging and weeding and pruning, and you shape and design your garden. So who are the designers? I think we're all designers. Anybody who's designing a new suburb of a city is a designer of the 21st century economy. And they're bringing in these regenerative principles and distributive principles. What we need from government is to create and enable people to create the legal business models that allow them to put purpose at the heart of their company, that allow them and make it easy to be employee-owned and to have finance that supports this regenerative design. We need governments to ban single-use plastics, ban putting useful materials in landfill, and give a long, legal and loud message about that so everybody knows that's going to be phased out within 5 years, guys. So start changing a business right now. So put those frameworks in place so that we get a regenerative economy happening.
You say more maypole dancing.
So maypole dancing. So I think economists are treated very serious. These are the real specialists. I think of that as sort of Lord of the Dance, the kingpin dancer at the front and all the other subjects and all the other ways of thinking behind, like a chorus line. What we actually need is maypole dancing, where you've each got your ribbon and you're weaving in and out. So John Maynard Keynes, John Stuart Mill, the great philosophers of the past, they understood this. They said a truly great economist is also a historian and a mathematician, understands sociology, understands political science. An economic angle on life is just one part of the whole. We have to be rounded and work together and really embed economics back in the social world from which it came.
Kate Raworth's book is Donut Economics. It's my new favorite economics textbook. 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. It's just out from Chelsea Green. Really great talking with you.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
That was self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth, author of Donut Economics and a senior research associate at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute. For more, go to lauraflanders.com. And if you like what you're hearing and what you're not hearing, like ads, become a supporter of independent, commercial-free podcasts like this one. To support this one, go to lauraflanders.com/membership and we'll thank you. Thank you. Next, a conversation between 2 eco-feminists about Marx, feminism, and life on the planet. Just what is productive labor? Anyway, Donna Andrews from the Food, Politics and Cultures Project at the University of the Western Cape talks with Kashmira Bani of Resistance et Alternative of Mauritius. After this musical break featuring I.P.C.C. by Baba Brinkman from his album, The Rap Guide to Climate Chaos.
You want a new definition of hardcore? Check out the Intergovernmental Climate Report. It says the world is getting warmer unequivocally, and the oceans have increased 30% in acidity, and 90% of the warming trend is oceanic and concentrated in the Arctic. Nobody panic, but the level of greenhouse gases in the air is higher now than it's been in millions of years. We added more than 1 trillion tons of CO2 to the atmosphere. It's gonna be centuries before some of the gas is clear. I'm dropping science, unvarnished, unbiased, but I don't blame you if your instinct is to deny it, cause we evolved to prioritize immediate threats. If it bleeds, it leads, that's what the media says. So let the gangster-esque rap music paint a picture, and I'll hit you with some evidence-based predictions. Get ready for wars, famines, droughts, floods, hurricanes, heat waves, murders, thugs, chaos, refugees, stress, disease, extinction, disaster, I.P.C.C.
Ecofeminism. What is it exactly? And what does it mean to think in feminist ways about energy extraction and exploitation? This spring, I was invited to participate in a meeting convened by the Transnational Institute and the Alternative Information and Development Center based in Cape Town. There I had a chance to sit down with 2 women with interestingly contrasting views on ecofeminism, Donna Andrews from South Africa and Kashmira Bani from Mauritius.
For a very long time, I can speak about myself too.
Donna Andrews, Food, Politics and Cultures Project, University of Western Cape, South Africa.
The focus was on, well, a north-south discussion about development. It was very much about, well, I could have told you 15 years ago my argument would have been, how do we industrialize, how do we ensure work, how do we ensure not necessarily economic growth in a neoliberal sense at all, but rather how do we facilitate and ensure that things are public and not private. In a country like South Africa, we're talking about racial dispossession, so the demand for public goods are essential. I think over the last period, it's not that the conversation has shifted per se, rather I think the ecological crisis has imposed itself on us. And I think it would be unfair to think that it's the environmental movement per se, because that's about the climate. But the eco-feminist movement have been talking about body and land and fish and sea and oceans for a very long time. And perhaps it's that has re-articulated itself in new form.
Kashmira Bani, Resistance ek Alternative, Mauritius.
Social reproduction is about regeneration of life. You know, people, women, doesn't have access to seed, doesn't have access to land, and when you cannot grow vegetable, when you cannot grow the basic needs, things for animals, for human beings to be alive, when you're destroying life, there is a need for that reproduction of agriculture, reproduction of life. It's not about conceiving children, etc. No, it's about capitalism has in French we call that acapor, grabbing of land, grabbing of seed. They control what we eat. Monsanto control the world food. For me, this is, regenerating life.
So I think
taking control of life. Sorry.
No apologies. I think that there's another dimension to it. So I think that, which is great, you reclaiming a notion of social reproduction in a regenerative way, and I think that that's important. So there's almost like you've gone the step towards the alternative. So when I think of social reproduction, it's not that, but social reproduction is as opposed to production, capitalist production, right? When I think about and speak about social reproduction, I'm talking about the invisible work that women are doing and people are doing all the time to subsidize the capitalist system.
There is not one alternative, there are many alternatives, and people are unique. We are different. We have different aspirations, and what's important is that we live together. We meet our aspiration in respect with nature. I mean, we admit that the earth has finite resources. Okay, and we cannot practice an extractive system. People must be able to dream to implement a new social, economic, global order. It has to be, creative. It has to be dynamic. It has to respond to people's needs and in respect with nature, with regards to its limitation, etc., etc. And this process is permanent. Our life is not static. It's dynamic, and there are new challenges coming. There are new contradictions coming. So being able to sit together, to work together in a participatory, democratic way is a good start.
So I'm going to talk about for and against, and I guess that's my politics. Historically, I'm in transition. But I definitely think this false dichotomy between economy and politics, all these divisions that we have, the binaries that we have, I think that, your question is about the new way, etc. It's to dismantle the master's house. I don't think it's easy. I think for myself, I mean, I think it's really challenging. But I think that if anything, when you use the words of capitalism and patriarchy, the thing that is really, really important for me to, bring home or reinforce is it's the subordination of everything below the economy. So the epicenter is the logic of efficiency. It's all the time. It's not only the discourse. We speak about our material world. So discourse sometimes it sounds like a story, but it's not just a story. It's really at the heart of it is, why is it so central for us to put our exchanges in the world, our love, our care, our food, everything through a market which is based on the notion of the economy, which is in fact the epicenter of our crisis. So I think that part of the alternative has to be to shrink the economy, shrink its power, shrink its dominance over our household, etc. If we're talking about economy in a different way, which is sharing, bartering, caring, etc., then I think that's sort of fundamental.
I think what you're doing here, we are complementing each other.
That was Donna Andrews from the University of Western Cape speaking with Kashmira Bani of Mauritius, two eco-feminists I had a chance to sit down with this past spring at a meeting convened by the Transnational Institute and the Alternative Information and Development Centre based in Cape Town, South Africa. Earlier in the show, my guest was Kate Raworth from Oxford University. You can find video of these conversations as well as links to Kate's book and all our archives at lauraflanders.com. And don't forget, if you like this podcast, or at least you'd like to share the word about it with your friends, take a moment and write a review at iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcasts. It really helps us spread the word. Next, the F word, this week's commentary. The week was drawing to a close when the news took a turn to the grotesque. As he spoke to police officers and sheriffs on Long Island, President Trump was suddenly talking all about blood. Cartels and criminals are preying on our citizens, he said. Then something about healthcare, then back again to blood. Bloodshed, blood, and burning, and something about people in barrels and kidnappings and not being nice. I should clarify, I do try to watch the president as often as I can. He is the president, after all, even if he sometimes turns your stomach. From blood, the president went off on a riff about disrespect for the rule of law and murder and butchery and beatings. I was glad there were no children in the room, and frankly, I began to lose track. He talked about knives and stabbings and peaceful neighborhoods transformed into blood-soaked killing fields. His words, "We cannot tolerate the spilling of innocent, young, vibrant people." I think he meant blood. "We cannot accept this violence one day more. We can't and we won't. Just look at what's going on," said the president. I did my best to remember where else I'd been hearing about so much blood. Where else had I been hearing about blood and beatings and burning, even burning, no, especially burning, tranquil neighborhoods set alight. Venezuela, of course. Also Molotov cocktails and bombs fired at factories and food distribution centers and public transportation and public health clinics. Venezuela's government's got its critics on the left, but it's the violent U.S.-backed ones on the right that have been burning people alive this year. They've assassinated politicians they consider socialist, and this June they burned the Supreme Court. In May, they tear-gassed and laid siege to a maternity hospital packed with just-born babies. Trump's grim catalogue of death brought it all back, especially the news footage of a black man yelled at, then stabbed and beaten and doused with gasoline and set alight by an anti-government mob. 21-year-old Orlando Figueroa, a Venezuelan parking attendant, died from his burns. Innocent, young, vibrant, as the president would say, spilled. And more of it came this week as millions of Venezuelans, in spite of it all, turned out to vote. So, what's going on? The violent overthrow of a government and a movement the U.S. has had it in for since its start. In the case of Venezuela, President Trump's on the side of the mob, not the government, the burners, not the burnt. Still, he's asking the right questions. Look around. What's going on? And are we going to tolerate it? I'm Laura Flanders. You're listening to The Laura Flanders Show. You can write to me. Tell me what you think at Laura, L-A-U-R-A, at lauraflanders.com. And thanks. You can find video of all these conversations, as well as Kate's book, and all our archives at lauraflanders.com. And if you're enjoying this program, please write us a review. It just takes a moment, and it really helps spread the word. The show's produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, and supervising producer Anna Barsan. Our team that pulls it all together includes Monica Mohapatra, Natasha Elena Ullman, Jeannie Hopper, Danica D'Souza, Emily Allen, Charlotte Prager, and Diego Romero Montiel. Write to me. I enjoy hearing from you. That's Laura, L-A-U-R-A, at lauraflanders.com. Tell me what you think. I do my best to respond. The Law of Flanders show is made possible by the Novo Foundation and listeners like you. So become a member today. Thank you for your time and your ongoing support. We could not do it without you. Stay kind. Stay curious. Till the next time, I'm Laura Flanders.